In my opinion, this is one of those films where the bits that work really well, but the bits that don't work well are kind of bad. So just watched Mortal Kombat 2021, the new one. First of all, let me just explain where I am when it comes to Mortal Kombat. I am, as my channel suggests, I am kind of crazy about things to do with the 80s and 90s, particularly the 90s, because I grew up in the 90s. I'm a millennial kid, and thusly I grew up in the gaming era. I grew up during the console wars, as it were, or the bit wars, whichever you want to call it. And I was a Sega guy. I was a Sega player. And one of the franchises, I should say, that I and my friends were kind of crazy about was Mortal Kombat. Particularly the first and second ones. The third one, a bit, not so much. But yeah, the first and second Mortal Kombat games we were kind of crazy about, and we played it non-stop, pretty much on a daily basis for a while. So when it comes to the first and second Mortal Kombat games, there's pretty much nothing I don't know about them, really. Anything past the third game, I start to get a little bit blurry. I do know bits and pieces about the newer characters and the more recent characters, but not as much as the original three games. So that's one of the things that makes this film interesting for me. I'll come back to that in a moment. Let me just briefly talk about the original film here. Now, I've forgotten the year that this was released. Was it 95, 96, somewhere like that? I remember when this thing came out, the first film came out, and I was kind of hyped by it. I think most of us were, of a certain age. I was 10 or 11, 12 maybe. And it was all we could pretty much talk about in school, in the playgrounds and so on, about the fact there was a new Mortal Kombat film coming out, and we saw it, and of course it has this sort of reputation now as being a little bit bad, but in a good kind of way. It's great for nostalgia. It's great for nostalgia. I still enjoy watching the original Mortal Kombat film, purely for that reason, because it's nostalgic. It reminds me of when I would play the games when I was a kid. I always saw the first one as kind of being cartoony and very much like the games. The characters look great, in my opinion. Maybe a little sort of... they're not very authentic in the sense that, you kind of get the feeling that you could get these costumes from a Halloween shop or a costume shop and wear them yourself, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because who wouldn't want to dress up like the characters in Mortal Kombat? So that's not a bad thing. So it's not very authentic. Again, that's interesting when it comes to the film I've just seen, which I'll come back to. But it looked amazing to a certain extent. I'm fully aware that some of the effects, particularly Reptile, kind of bad. But when I say looks amazing, I mean the sets and, the way it looked, colours, and, the characters looked okay, and things like that. For example, I just love the scene where Johnny Cage takes on Scorpion in that great setting of the forest with the long trees. That's what I mean. It looks good in that sense. So yeah, as I say, it's got a great reputation as being a sort of a cult favorite now, the Mortal Kombat film. And of course, who could forget that awesome music? Again, I'll come back to that for this film. The classic Mortal Kombat theme where we all just wanted to shout. So yeah, I like it. It's not like the world's greatest film or anything. It's no Oscar winner, but it's a classic bit of 90s gaming nostalgia. And it's better, a damn sight better than some other computer game films that have been made, which will be nameless in this case. So let's stop talking about that, and we'll start talking about this film, the Mortal Kombat 2021 film. Like I said earlier, the bits that work well work quite well, in my opinion. However, there are bits that don't work well that are terrible. Let me just get this out of the way. Would I rather watch this one over the original Mortal Kombat film? Hell no. Hell no. People might disagree with me there, which is fair enough. Personally not, no. It's not as cartoony. It's not, I don't know whether I mean this as a good thing or a bad thing, but this one, it's not as much like the game as the original film was. It's more authentic. How can I put it? There is still, of course, the mystic, magical aspect, so it's not realistic in that sense, but it's more realistic. The original Mortal Kombat film was more fantasy, and you certainly felt that. But in this one, the recent one, it's not so much fantasy. It's grounded more in reality, outside of shooting fireballs from your hands and that sort of thing. It looks great. It looks great. The scenes and the sets in particular, I think, look really, really good. Particularly to the first third of the film, the first act, because after the first half and towards the end, it gets kind of bad. This is just my view, of course, but the beginning, the first third, the first maybe 3/4 of an hour, works quite well, and it looks amazing. The character introductions are a bit rushed, it seems. They all kind of come in, it seems, all at once, maybe 5-10 minutes apart. You meet one person, then that person meets Sonya Blade, and then Sonya Blade introduces this character, Kano, and then, it all seems to be a bit kind of thrown in. But apart from that, it looks pretty good. I'll come back to the characters in a minute, but the settings look great. There is one in particular where some of the characters are looking for a temple out in the sparse wastelands, and there's great shots of the characters walking in the distance in the horizon, and you see this wonderful overhead shot of a great panning shot of a temple. It looks great. It looks really, really good. Locations are good. They're genuine locations. They're not just like cheap sets like in the first one. So that's a plus. At least for the beginning part of the film. Characters. The characters are good. The characters that we see are good. This was a bit of a letdown for me, because the choice of characters used, in my opinion, not great. Not great. Because, as I say, they get a bit ambitious with the characters in that they pick some characters that I think appeared in Mortal Kombat games after the first three, which is what I was talking about earlier. Like Cabal, for example. Cabal makes an appearance. Now, I know he first turned up in the third one, so I vaguely remembered him when he turns up in the film. He looks pretty good, actually. But there are other characters that I was kind of hazy about. I kind of asked myself, which which game is he from? Which game is she from? So I think they could have chosen a bit better with the characters, particularly the henchman characters, the characters that work for Shang Tsung. There's Melina. I'm familiar with Melina. She apart from the famous teeth that she has, she doesn't look great. I mean, Melina's supposed to be like this. She's supposed to like be dressed in this purple outfit, and it doesn't. She doesn't look, as I say, apart from the face. Like when she first turns up in the film in Outworld, we get to see Outworld as well. I don't think I've ever seen Outworld before. It's not in the first film, and it's not in any of the Mortal Kombat games I've played. So it was good to see Outworld for once. Am I wrong about that? Have I seen Outworld and just forgotten? Anyway, I can't remember seeing Outworld. Anyway, well, when Melina first turns up, I didn't know it was her, because apart from when you see the face closer up, it doesn't look like her too much, I don't think. And that's kind of the problem with the other characters as well. There's another character with wings that I didn't recognise at all. Let me know in the comments, which Mortal Kombat game does the girl with the wings turn up? Did I miss that one? Was she in the first 3 games? I can't remember. Anyway, this is what I'm talking about. There was also another guy with a mallet, and I didn't recognise him either. Is he in the first 3? I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a complete noob here when it comes to Mortal Kombat. After the 3rd Mortal Kombat game, I actually am a bit of a noob. So let me know who these characters are and where they first turned up. So the guy with the mallet I was unfamiliar with. The girl with the wings I was unfamiliar. Melina I knew. They could have used characters that we were a bit more familiar. Where was like, for example, Baraka? They could have brought Baraka in. We all knew who he was. He was on the promotional material, for goodness sake. We all knew who Baraka was, and they could have used him as one of the bad guys. And they could have used some more familiar characters, is my point, I think. But the characters that we are familiar with, they're quite good. Kano was my personal favourite in this film. Well cast, I thought. Just a typical sort of Kano character, a foul mouth. Speaking of foul mouth, this film, it certainly takes another step when it comes to the language and the gore. Mind you, the gore is not very gory in that it is mostly CGI. CGI blood, CGI injuries, CGI, violence, that sort of thing, as one would expect in a film this day and age. But other characters, Sonya Blade, she's okay. They underplayed her a bit, I thought. But she was good, well cast, I thought. Just your standard, Sonya Blade character, what you would expect Sonya Blade to look and sound like and behave like. So she was okay. Nothing extreme, just okay. And there are other characters, as I say, Cabal makes an appearance. As I say, I was kind of vaguely familiar with him from the 3rd one. Don't remember him too much, though. He looks pretty good. And there are other characters. We should talk about Goro. I say that I would rather watch the original film than this one. That goes double for Goro. The Goro in the original is way better. But why? Because the one that turns up in this film is nothing. He's just He's just yet another CGI character. I know that the one in the first film had some CGI parts in the face and everything, but it was a guy. For the most part, it was a guy in a costume, which of course is what makes it cool. But this one, it just looks like something out of World of Warcraft. Now let's talk about this new guy. It turns out that the Liu Kang is not the main antagonist in this film. He is in the original, but not in it. He is in it, and he's good. Cast a bit. The guy who plays him is a little bit not quite, in my opinion. Not bad, but not quite. maybe a bit young or not quite the right shape or build, or there was just something about him. He was fine, but there was something about him that was a little bit off, in my opinion. Didn't quite fit. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so Liu Kang's not the antagonist. It's another guy. It's a brand new character that was invented for this movie. Apparently, we are going to have a sequel. But, yeah, this character, what's his name? Cole? Is that his name? Cole Young? Cole Young? He's the descendant of one of the characters. He basically, he's a little bit bland, actually. He just seems to be sort of there for the sake of being a new character. Other than having this, it's a bit like the recent Power Rangers film, where he has to discover his powers. He has, Raiden tells him that he has the power within him, and he has to hone it, and then of course when he's fighting Goro, he finds his power, and then he suddenly grows this weird shell, this shell over his body, that's sort of made of fire or something. The idea is he's supposed to have, he's supposed to have inherited some powers from Scorpion or that sort of thing. So he becomes just this new character that doesn't actually have a fighting character name. He's just Cole Young, which is fair enough. Remember how great, I mean, I know the CGI was terrible in the original film with Reptile, but remember how great it looked when Reptile jumped into that skeleton, and then the skeleton morphed into the green suited guy with the green mask and everything, and then they fight Reptile. The CGI was shit, but at least that scene, was incredible. That really got me hyped when I first saw it. Reptile! We're going to fight Reptile! Oh my god, in this one, I don't even know if it was supposed to be Reptile, because no one actually refers to it as Reptile. All I can say is there is a Reptile character in this. It is a reptile. It's not a man. It's not a guy in a green, with a mask or anything. It's just a reptile, and it looks like Rhys Ifans in The Amazing Spider-Man. It's not a bad design. The CG it's better than Goro, but it's okay. It's passable. The fight sequence is okay, but it's quick. As I say, the fight sequences are quick. I'll come back to that in a moment. The fight sequences, but all I can say is there is a reptile-like creature in it, and they do fight it. I don't know if it's supposed to be Reptile. I'm assuming it is, but I was just disappointed that if they were going to put Reptile in it for no particular reason, why didn't they have the guy with the mask? Why didn't they have him? Because it's shown that this reptile creature has abilities, has powers. He goes invisible, and he shape-shifts a bit, I think. So why didn't they put him into I don't know, like they did in the first one? Why didn't they have him become the green suited guy if they were going to bring Reptile in? But that was a weird sequence because, as I say, no one actually refers to it as Reptile, the character. So that was a bit of a strange thing. God, these characters were weird. Now I think about it, they were quite strange, actually. The fight sequences. You see, this is a problem. This was one of the good things about the first original film. It felt like a tournament, and it felt like they were fighting for Mortal Kombat. And the fight sequences actually felt like they were taken from the game. You would have different sequences with different characters fighting different characters. So, for example, Sonya Blade walks along the beach, enters a ring, and then Kano comes in, and the two of them, with the guy watching over them, and he would say, fight, and the two of them would fight. She kills him, and then we move on to another fight sequence with Johnny Cage walking through the woods, and then Scorpion says, get over here, and then you have Johnny Cage fighting Scorpion. And then another sequence, you have Liu Kang, and then Sub-Zero walks down the stairs, and then, Liu Kang fights Sub-Zero. So you have that was the good thing about the original film, is that you actually had proper fight sequences that felt like Mortal Kombat. In this one, it doesn't, for me personally, it didn't feel like that at all. The fight sequences weren't that good. There are a few good, quick fight sequences. They're a bit clunky, they're a bit slow. But when it comes, there's this sequence, for example, where the characters all meet in this white, they call it the void, the realm between all realms and so on. And what they do is they quickly talk about, they come up with this quick plan. They say, right, what we're going to do is, Raiden, you can bring all these characters different places, right? Yes, I can. So they say, right, Sonya, you're going to fight this guy, and Kano, you're going to fight Kano, and Jax, you're fighting the guy with the mallet, and So then they quickly go to these different locations that kind of, sort of look like fighting levels from the game, but they're over too quickly. The fights last like 10 seconds or 15, 20 seconds. I just didn't feel it. I didn't get the same kind of feel like I got when I saw the first film. It's fine. As I say, the film is fine, but it just kind of felt standard, like a standard fighting film. If I was to compare it to any recent film I've seen, I would certainly compare it to the recent, was it 2016, 2017, the Power Rangers film. I kind of got that kind of feeling here, except it was more graphic, more swearing, more blood. Not that it was realistic blood, but there was more blood. But the atmosphere, the way the characters converse with each other, the way they talk to each other, the way that the story plays out about them discovering, they when they go to Raiden's temple, there's a lot of talk about, training and finding yourself and how to use your powers and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of, it's the usual sort of, they go to a temple and they're just discovering themselves, who they are, what they're supposed to do, that kind of thing. And I know we've seen that kind of thing before, but in Mortal Kombat, how else are you supposed to do it? Like in the original film, they all kind of knew about Mortal Kombat, sort of, and they knew that they all had special abilities. And but if you're going to do it properly, as I say, more realistically in this film, how else could you do it besides, the usual, go to a sacred temple-like place, be trained how to fight, be trained how to use your powers, discover your powers if you haven't already, and then fight at the end, except they don't. Not really. They do, but they sort of don't. The only major fight sequence at the end is between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and the other characters don't really do that much fighting. They fight a lot, but it seems like just sort of normal fighting, if that makes sense. It doesn't seem like otherworldly fighting. It doesn't seem like, it just seems like the kind of fighting you would see in a fighting film, like Matrix or something like that. We've seen it before. It's just fancy fighting, spinning, and Avengers stuff, Black Widow, spin kicking, and that sort of thing, special moves. It's great. It looks great. It looks, impressive, but it doesn't feel like Mortal Kombat. Other than that, what else is there to talk about? I liked it. It was also good to hear another take on the theme tune. Kinda. It's, again, the theme tune's not as good as the original. They try to sort of bring in another version of it into the mix, and it's not terrible, I suppose, but I much prefer the original. I think that's kind of how I stand here. I just much prefer the original, as I expected to. The costumes are pretty good, especially Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero could have been a bit more blue, in my opinion, but he looks okay. He has a bluish kind of tint on his armor, so he does look a bit blue. But Scorpion looked good when he finally turned up. And as I say, the other characters just looked sort of generic. Nothing too impressive, but they looked like, who they were supposed to look like. Sonya Blade looked like Sonya Blade. Liu Kang, there's a scene where Liu Kang first comes in and you can see his silhouette walking towards the camera, and I just thought to myself, that's Liu Kang. You can tell because of his hair. It just looked like Liu Kang. He looks like Liu Kang, maybe a little bit miscast, as I said, but not terribly, maybe just a little bit. Jax, the first time Jax turned up, I knew that was Jax. I just knew it because he's kind of the skinny torso but big bulky arms, and of course I'm thinking that's Jax and he's going to lose his arms, and when Kano appeared, I thought to myself, there's Kano. So they all do look like their characters, to be fair. They're not bad. They just don't look as much like in the game as the other characters in the other movie do. With a few exceptions, maybe Raiden. Raiden looks pretty good. Kung Lao, I think, is one of the best looking characters, I think. And he's well cast. He performs that part well. As I say, the bad guys, they're also a bit generic, and as I said, the selection of the bad guys not brilliant. They could have done better here. They could have brought Baraka in. They could have brought a proper reptile character in as opposed to just a reptile. They could have brought in Cyrax. They could have brought in Ermac. They could have just used their imagination a bit more, I think, when it comes to the bad guys. Shang Tsung, he's all right. I preferred the other guy. I've forgotten the actor's name in the original one, but he was okay. Not in it much. Just like Raiden, all he did really was just sort of turn up and then disappear again in a flash of light. So there wasn't really much to Shang Tsung and Raiden in this film. I don't know how I feel about a sequel. Maybe there's room for improvement here. Maybe what we're seeing here is just an introduction to some better stuff. Sequels have a kind of mixed bag reputation nowadays. Some rare gems turn out to be okay, but most of them maybe not. I didn't dislike it. I was interested to watch it, but I think that's mostly just because of my familiarity with the original Mortal Kombat games and with the original film, and so I think that's mostly why I was engaged in it. I think if I was just picking this film up and watching it without knowing anything or much about Mortal Kombat, I don't know if I would have got as much out of it as I did. I think it would help. I think it does help, or would help, if you knew the games, or at least knew the first film. That would certainly add to it. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on Mortal Kombat 2021. Not brilliant, but not terrible, I didn't think. As I said at the very beginning, the parts that worked well worked very well. The way that some parts of it looked were pretty damn good. The locations, the scenes, the scenic shots, some of the fight sequences good, some of the fight sequences not so good. So I think we have a sort of 50-50 split here with how good the film is. I would much rather watch the original film. That's my take. But yeah, just not a bad film at all. Just a sort of generic film. I wouldn't even call it a computer game film this time. I would just call it a film based on a computer game, if that makes sense. The first Mortal Kombat film is a computer game film. But this one is just a film that's loosely based on a computer game with characters from that game. Well, some familiar, characters from the community game. Other characters, not so much for me, depending on which games you've played. I haven't played the more recent Mortal Kombat games like 10 and 11. I am going to get round to trying it at some point, because I would like to become a bit more familiar. Maybe I'll play the other Mortal Kombat games for future videos for the channel. Well, I will at some point, because as I say, I'm not that familiar with games after the third one. So I'll have to do that at some point to familiarize myself. Maybe after I've done that, I'll watch this film again. Maybe it'll be better. I'll try maybe doing that. Let me know what you guys thought of it in the comments, by all means, and let me know if I'm right or wrong about things regarding the games and the characters. I admit, after the third game, I'm a bit of a noob. So I might have said some things about characters that are wrong. Please do let me know. I would be happy to discuss it. Let me know what you thought of the film, and let me know what you thought of the games and the original film, and I'd be happy to talk with you guys about it, because Mortal Kombat from the 90s is something that I was very much in love with, and I always love talking about Mortal Kombat. So yeah, that was my take on Mortal Kombat 2021. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and help me support the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.